Ego Detox: How to Strip Away Pride and Unlock Your True Potential. Listen this complete audiobook. Your ego is running your life and you don't even know it. Right now, someone you love is pulling away because you can't admit you're wrong. Right now, an opportunity is passing you by because you're too proud to ask for help. Right now, you're stuck. Not because you lack talent, not because you lack opportunity, but because your ego has convinced you that protecting your image is more important than building your life. The uncomfortable truth: your greatest enemy isn't out there, it's inside you. And in the next hour, I'm going to show you exactly how to dismantle it. This is Ego Detox. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The ego is not you. Let me start with something uncomfortable. You have been mistaking your ego for yourself your entire life. That voice in your head telling you that you're not good enough? That's not you. That voice telling you that you're better than everyone else? That's not you either. Both of those voices are your ego. And here's what you need to understand right now. Your ego is not your personality. Your ego is not your ambition. Your ego is not your drive. Your ego is a defense mechanism. It's a survival response built from childhood wounds, fear, and a desperate need to belong. It's been running your entire life and you've been blaming yourself for its behavior. That's the first lie we need to expose. Your ego is a parasite, not a personality trait. Read that again. Your ego is a parasite, not a personality trait. A parasite feeds off the host. It doesn't belong to the host. It's not part of the host's true nature. It just attached itself and now feeds off your emotional energy, your attention, your shame. And the most brilliant thing about how your ego operates, it makes you think it's protecting you. It whispers fear. You're not good enough. And in the same breath, it screams compensation. But you're better than everyone else. Do you see the contradiction? Do you see how exhausting that is? This is the core of ego dysfunction. Your ego has convinced you that you need both of these things to survive, the inadequacy and the superiority, when the truth is that neither one is real. They're both defense mechanisms. They're both lies designed to keep you small, controlled, and desperately seeking approval from a world that's indifferent to your internal suffering. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. I know a high performer. Brilliant person? By every external measure, they're crushing it. They're successful, wealthy, respected. People look at them and say, man, that person has it all figured out. But here's what no one sees. They feel empty. They feel like a fraud, because they've been chasing validation, not values. Every achievement is another hit of external approval. Every success is another moment of feeling temporarily whole. But the feeling never lasts. So they chase the next achievement. They chase the next accomplishment. They need the next win to feel okay again. Your ego is a parasite, not a personality trait. And this person has been feeding it for 20 years. Now let me tell you about ego's greatest trick. Ego doesn't just show up as arrogance. Ego shows up as insecurity too. The person bragging about their success at every opportunity? That's ego. The person apologizing for existing? That's also ego. The person who starts every sentence with, I'm probably wrong, but that's ego. The person who name drops and peacocks? That's ego. But the person who shrinks themselves to make others comfortable? That's ego too. They're both trapped in the comparison game. The braggart is desperately defending against inadequacy. The self-deprecator is desperately seeking reassurance. Pride and shame are two sides of the same ego coin. Until you see this duality, you cannot escape it. Most people spend their entire lives fighting one side of this coin, usually the side they're most afraid of. So if you grew up in scarcity, you might overcompensate with arrogance. If you grew up in chaos, you might overcorrect with self-deprecation. You're not being humble or confident. You're being ego-driven, and you won't break free until you see that both states are the same prison. That's the key. That's what changes everything. Now here's what nobody tells you. Freedom begins with recognition. You cannot detox from something you don't see. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge. You can't change what you refuse to look at. So the first step, the absolute foundation of ego detox, is learning to catch your ego in action. And I mean in real time, not in hindsight. Not tomorrow. Now here are the ego signatures. Burn these into your memory. First, you're defending yourself without being asked. Someone says something neutral, and you're already explaining yourself. They didn't attack you, but you're defending. That's ego. Your ego got triggered by a perceived threat, and you're scrambling to protect your image. Awareness is the first antidote to ego. Second, you're justifying your choices to people who didn't question them. You made a decision. You're volunteering explanations. You're offering reasons. You're seeking permission retroactively. That's ego. You're looking for external validation to confirm you made the right choice. Third, you're deflecting blame. Something went wrong. Instead of saying, I failed, you're explaining why it wasn't your fault. You're pointing fingers. You're contextualizing. You're doing anything except taking responsibility. That's ego. Your ego is working overtime to keep your image intact. Fourth, you need others to validate your choices. You're texting friends asking for reassurance. You're posting things hoping for reactions. You're seeking feedback on decisions you've already made. That's ego. You're asking the world to confirm that you're okay. Once you see these patterns, once you really see them, you can interrupt them. You can catch yourself in the moment. You can pause and ask, is this me or is this my ego? Is this authentic or is this a defense mechanism? You have a choice. Right now you have a choice. The moment you start seeing your ego as separate from yourself, something shifts. It's not your fault anymore. It's not a character flaw. It's a pattern. And patterns can be broken. You've just learned the foundation of ego detox. Your ego is not you. It's a parasite masquerading as protection. And now that you can see it, you can stop feeding it. Which brings us to the hard part. Now that you know your ego exists, you're going to have to stop protecting it. And that means stopping the behavior that's been sabotaging your life. It means exposing yourself. It means vulnerability. It means admitting you're wrong. It means asking for help. Because protecting your image has cost you everything else. Let's talk about that next. Chapter 2. Stop proving and start doing. You know what's killing your potential? You're spending all your energy proving yourself instead of improving yourself. All of it. Every ounce of effort you have is going into one thing: making people believe you're worth something. And while you're doing that exhausting work, you're completely blind to how you're actually performing. Let me be blunt. You're not getting better. You're just getting louder. Your ego demands an audience. It needs witnesses. It needs people watching. That's the whole game for your ego. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Excellence doesn't care who's watching. Excellence doesn't need validation. Excellence doesn't require applause. Excellence just happens. It builds, it grows, it compounds. And by the time anyone notices, it's already unstoppable. But your ego won't allow silence. Your ego won't allow the work to speak for itself. Your ego is terrified of invisibility. So you announce, you post, you explain, you share, you perform. And the more you perform, the less you actually build. I know someone like this. Let me paint the picture so you see yourself. This person is obsessed with social media. Every accomplishment, no matter how small, gets posted. Just close this deal. Here's my morning workout. Look at this project I started. Check out my new mindset. They're documenting their entire life in real time. And you know what I notice? The posts get bigger. The announcements get louder. The performance gets more theatrical. But the substance, the actual achievement, it's not growing. It's stagnant. They haven't built anything significant in 3 years. But they've built an impressive narrative about the person they're pretending to be. That's the performance trap. That's where your ego is dragging you right now. This person is addicted to the feeling of being seen. not the substance of achievement. Do you understand the difference? One is a hit, one is a foundation. The hit is temporary. The person sees your post, likes it, moves on. You get a surge of validation. You feel good for 3 minutes. Then it fades, and you're hungry again. So you post again. You announce again. You perform again. Prove nothing. Do everything. That's the mantra you need to adopt right now. But here's what happens when you're trapped in constant performance. You become emotionally fragile. You become volatile. Watch what happens. Someone compliments you and you're flying high. Someone criticizes you and you're devastated. One positive comment and you're thinking about it all day. One negative comment and you spiral into insecurity. You're on a roller coaster and you don't even know it, because your sense of worth is external. It's not inside you. It's out there. It depends on what other people think. And other people are inconsistent. Other people are unpredictable. Other people are indifferent. So your worth becomes unstable. When your sense of worth comes from outside approval, you're building on sand. One wave of criticism destroys you. One compliment inflates you. You're emotionally volatile because your foundation is unstable. You've handed over the keys to your peace of mind to people who don't care about your peace of mind. Meanwhile, watch the person with real confidence. They don't need constant reassurance. They're not posting every win. They're not explaining every choice. They're not seeking feedback on their decisions. They're too busy working. They're too busy building. They're too busy improving. Because they know something you don't. Their worth is not on trial. It's not up for vote. It's not negotiable. And that certainty, that internal foundation, is what actually attracts respect. That's the key. That's what changes everything. Validation is a drug. Achievement is a foundation. Now here's where most people get stuck. They understand this intellectually. They hear me say, prove nothing, do everything, and they think, yeah, okay, I get it. But then they don't change anything, because change feels uncomfortable, because invisible work feels pointless, because what's the value of building something nobody knows about? That's your ego talking. That's your ego lying to you. Here's what I need you to do. This is not theory. This is action. Stop announcing your wins. You closed a deal. Don't tell anyone. Did the work. Let the results speak. Started a project. Don't pitch it to people. Build it. Finish it. Ship it. Then and only then, if people ask, you can tell them what you did. Stop explaining your vision to people who didn't ask for it. Stop defending your choices to people who don't support you. This is the hardest part, because your ego will scream that you're being arrogant. Your ego will say you're being cold. Your ego will convince you that you're being selfish. That's backwards. You're being disciplined. You're being focused. You're being wise. Just build. Just do the work. That's it. No announcements. No Instagram stories. No, here's what I'm working on text to people who won't help you. Just work, quiet work. Invisible work. Work that only you know about. And here's what happens. The people who matter notice. The people who actually care about you, not your image but you, they see the results. They see the growth. They see the substance, and they respect it. Genuinely respect it. Not because you performed well, but because you delivered something real. But here's the twist. The people who notice won't matter. Let me explain. The people who are impressed by your constant announcements, those aren't your people. The people who need you to share every win to stay interested in you, they don't actually believe in you. They're just consuming content. Action speaks so loud that explanation becomes irrelevant. When you have something real, you don't need to talk about it. Look at the entrepreneurs who matter. They're not on podcasts talking about their vision before they have a product. They ship the product first. Then people talk about them. Look at the writers who matter. They're not on Twitter describing their book idea. They write the book. Then people read it. They're not proving themselves. They're proving the work exists. And that's completely different. The radical shift you need to make is this: from quiet proving to quiet competence. From loud performance to silent execution. From external validation to internal standards, prove nothing. Do everything. Every single day. For the next month. For the next year. Just build, just work. Let your results do the talking. Because results don't lie. Results don't need explanation. Results don't require an audience. Results are the only language excellence speaks. And when you finally understand that, when you really get it, you stop wasting energy on the performance. You redirect that energy toward the work, and that's when everything changes. Next, we have to talk about the other side of this coin, because stopping the performance is only half the battle. The other half is understanding why you've been so addicted to validation in the first place, and that addiction is destroying your ability to build real relationships. Chapter 3: The Silent Cost of Seeking Validation. I need you to understand something about your brain. Your brain is literally wired to seek approval. It's not a character flaw. It's not a moral failure. It's neurobiology. Your brain releases dopamine when you're validated. One like, one compliment, one moment of being seen triggers a hit, and you chase that hit. That's not ambition. That's addiction. And like all addictions, it has a cost. A massive cost. A cost you're paying right now and you don't even know it. Here's what's happening inside you. You see a notification. Someone liked your post. Your brain releases dopamine. You feel good. 2 hours later, the feeling fades. You're hungry again. So you post again, or you fish for another compliment, or you do something designed to get attention. You're chasing that dopamine hit. You're an addict. And your drug of choice is other people's approval. Now, the worst part about this addiction, it's invisible. It's socially acceptable. It's encouraged. The entire social media ecosystem is designed to exploit this exact mechanism in your brain. Everyone around you is addicted too. So nobody calls it what it is, an addiction, but it is, and it's destroying you. Here's what happens when you're in this loop. You lose your sense of self. You stop knowing what you actually want. You stop knowing what you actually believe. Instead, you start making decisions based on what gets approval. What will people like? What will people celebrate? What will get me the most validation? You've traded your voice for their applause. That's the trade you've made. And you don't even know you made it. Think about the last major decision you made. Really think about it. Was it based on what aligned with your values? Or was it based on what you thought people would approve of? Be honest. Most of the time it's the second one. You chose the safe path because it's more likely to be accepted. You chose the job that looks impressive instead of the work that excites you. You chose the partner that your family would approve of instead of the person that makes you come alive. You chose the image instead of the reality. You've traded your voice for their applause. And here's what's even worse. This addiction doesn't just cost you your sense of self. It destroys your relationships. When you need constant reassurance, you exhaust the people around you. Think about this carefully. Your partner can't give you enough validation. No matter how many compliments they offer, it's never enough. Your friends can't affirm you enough. Your family can't celebrate you enough. There's an infinite void inside you, and you're asking finite people to fill it. It's impossible. And so what happens? You resent them. You're angry at them for not meeting an impossible standard. You're resentful that they're not providing what you need. Meanwhile, they're pulling away. Because proximity to you has become a job. Being around someone who's constantly hungry for validation is exhausting. It's a one-way drain. They give and you're still empty. So they distance themselves. They stop calling. They stop visiting. They make excuses, not because they don't love you, but because being near you feels like a burden. And then you blame them. You think they're abandoning you. You think they don't care. You think they're selfish. But the truth is simpler and darker. They're running out of food. Needy energy repels love. Remember that. Write that down. Needy energy repels love. I know someone like this. Let me be specific so you see yourself. This person requires constant compliments, constant affirmation. If you don't tell them they're doing a good job, They spiral into insecurity. They start making it your responsibility to manage their emotional state. You never say anything nice to me. You don't believe in me. You're not supporting me. And the partner who loves them, who tries, gets exhausted. They try to provide reassurance. It doesn't work. They try to offer encouragement. It's never enough. And one day they realize they can't do this anymore. Not because they don't care about the person, but because they care about themselves too, so they leave. And the validation-hungry person thinks, see, I knew they didn't really love me. When the truth is they were never going to feel loved because they were looking for love in the wrong place. They were looking for it in other people's approval. And no amount of external approval will ever satisfy an internal void. This person is losing relationships. Not because they're unworthy, but because they're hungry and others are running out of food. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the transformation happens. When you stop seeking external validation, something paradoxical occurs. People start validating you more. Not less, more. Why? Because you're no longer desperate. Desperation repels. Indifference attracts. When you stop needing people's approval, you become attractive to people. When you stop trying to convince people you're worthy, they believe you are. When you stop performing, people actually respect you. This isn't arrogance. This isn't coldness. This is peace. This is the peace of knowing your worth is not on trial. It's not up for vote. It's internal. It's settled. And that certainty is magnetic. The moment you stop needing approval, you become worthy of it. Think about that. The moment you stop needing it. Not when you finally get enough of it. Not when everyone agrees with you. Not when the world validates you. The moment you stop needing it. Because here's what changes. You start making decisions based on what's right, not what's liked. You choose the work that excites you instead of the work that impresses people. You choose the truth instead of the comfortable lie. You say no to things you don't want. You say yes to things that scare you. You're no longer performing. You're living. And the people who matter, the people who actually care about you, they show up, they stay. They're attracted to that authenticity. They're drawn to that peace because they're tired of the performance too. They're tired of the constant validation game. And when they meet someone who's not playing, they exhale. Finally, someone real. But here's the hard part. Here's where most people fail. Stopping the validation seeking feels impossible. Because the dopamine is so addictive. Because being invisible feels terrifying. Because peace feels boring compared to the rush of being seen. You have to go through a withdrawal period. You have to be willing to feel ignored. You have to be willing to post something that gets no likes. You have to be willing to work on something nobody knows about. You have to be willing to disappoint people who need you to perform for them. That's the price of freedom. That's the cost of getting your voice back. You've traded your voice for their applause. Now you have to trade their applause for your voice. And the people who can't accept that, the people who resent your growth, those aren't your people. Let them go. Needy energy repels love, and your job is to stop being needy. Next, we need to talk about what happens when you choose to protect your image at all costs. Because your pride doesn't just isolate you from connection, it poisons your entire life. Chapter 4. Your pride is costing you everything. Your pride is the most expensive thing you own. And you don't even know you're paying for it. Every broken relationship in your life, there's pride underneath it. Every conflict that could have been resolved but wasn't. Pride, every apology you didn't make. Pride. Every word you swallowed instead of speaking truth. Pride protecting itself. Your pride is your silent killer. It's destroying your life while making you feel like you're standing on principle. That's the trick. That's how pride stays hidden. Pride disguises itself as principle. You tell yourself you're standing on principle when really you're just refusing to bend. You're rigid. You're unmovable. But you frame it as integrity. You tell yourself you're being authentic when really you're being defensive. You're protecting your ego from the threat of being wrong. But you call it being true to yourself. Pride wraps itself in the language of values to avoid admitting it's just fear. Pure fear. Let me show you what this looks like. I know someone who refuses to apologize. Refuses. They made a mistake. A clear, obvious mistake, but they won't say I'm sorry. Instead, they say I shouldn't have to explain myself, or they should understand me. And you know what's really happening under those words? They're terrified. Terrified of being seen as wrong. Terrified of being vulnerable. Terrified of admitting they're fallible. So instead of apologizing, they double down. They defend. They justify. They explain away. They do everything except take responsibility. What they're really saying is, I'm too scared to be vulnerable. But they don't see it that way. They see themselves as someone who won't be walked over, someone who stands their ground, someone with backbone, when the truth is simpler. They're someone too afraid to be human. Pride doesn't protect you. It isolates you. Remember that. Write that down. Pride doesn't protect you. It isolates you. Now let me tell you the cost. And I need you to feel this. Your pride is why marriages end. Couples sit across from each other in therapy or in silence, both waiting for the other person to apologize first, both convinced they're right, both unwilling to be vulnerable. And marriages die, not because they stopped loving each other, because they loved their pride more. Your pride is why friendships die. You have a falling out with someone who matters. It could be resolved in 30 seconds. You could say I was wrong, or I'm sorry, or I miss you. But you won't. Pride won't let you. So you both sit in silence. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And one day you realize you haven't talked in a year. And it's too late. The friendship is gone. All because neither of you was willing to be first. Your pride is why family members stop calling. Parents stop reaching out to children. Children stop visiting parents. Siblings don't speak for years. Entire families are fractured because nobody is willing to say I was wrong first. And the worst part? You won't even see the cost until it's too late. You won't realize what you lost until the person is gone, and then it's irreversible. Every time you choose being right over being connected, you're paying in broken relationships. Every single time. You have a choice. Every moment. You can be right or you can be related. You cannot be both. You have to pick. Let me give you a real example so you see yourself. There's a parent. Years ago, they hurt their child. A comment. A dismissal. A moment of coldness when the child needed warmth. It was a small thing in the parent's mind. But it landed differently in the child's heart. It became a wound. Now the child is an adult. The wound is still there. And the child is waiting. Waiting for an apology. Waiting for acknowledgement, waiting for the parent to say, I was wrong. But the parent can't do it. Why? Because admitting they were wrong means their pride takes a hit. It means they have to face the fact that they hurt someone they love. It means they have to be vulnerable. So instead they rationalize. They're too sensitive. They should get over it. It wasn't that serious. And the child hears this and feels erased. Not only did they get hurt, but now they're being told they shouldn't feel hurt. And the relationship dies, slowly, quietly, with no funeral. You can be right or you can be related. Pick one. I also know siblings who haven't spoken in years because one of them won at an argument. 1. They proved their point. They were right. And they lost their sibling. They traded a relationship for a victory, when they could have said, I hear you. I understand how you feel. I'm sorry. But they didn't. Pride wouldn't let them. So they chose winning an argument over mending a rift. They chose being right over being connected, and now they're alone. Vindicated, but alone. Here's what you need to understand. You're wrong more than you think. Your ego is convinced of its correctness. It's convinced you have the full picture, but you don't. You make mistakes constantly. You misread situations. You misunderstand people's intentions. You operate on incomplete information. You're making judgments based on a fraction of the truth, and you're defending those fractional judgments with all your might. The sooner you accept this, really accept it, the sooner you can actually learn. The sooner you can actually grow, because growth requires admission of error. Growth requires being willing to be wrong. Growth requires humility. Pride says, I'm right. Growth says, I'm willing to be wrong. Those are not compatible. You have to choose. Certainty is the enemy of wisdom. Think about that. The most certain people you know? Are they wise, or are they stuck? The wisest people I know are uncertain. They ask questions. They listen. They change their mind. They say I was wrong, because they understand something fundamental. The moment you're certain, you stop learning. The moment you know, you stop growing. Certainty closes doors. Uncertainty opens them. And your pride is built on certainty. Your pride is built on the conviction that you're right, that you understand, that you know better. Pride is the enemy of growth. Pride is the enemy of connection. Pride is the enemy of wisdom. The question isn't whether you should apologize or bend or admit you're wrong. The question is, what is this costing you? What relationships are you sacrificing? What love are you losing? What wisdom are you rejecting? Because every time you choose pride, you're paying with something irreplaceable. You can be right or you can be related. Pick one. Because you cannot have both. Next, we need to talk about the thing that drives pride in the first place. The thing that makes you compare yourself constantly to everyone around you. Because that comparison is the soil where pride grows. Chapter 5. The comparison trap is destroying you. Right now, at this exact moment, someone is living a life you wish you had. And you know exactly who they are. You've probably looked at their life in the last 24 hours, maybe in the last 2 hours, and you've compared it to yours, and you felt small. That's not a character flaw. That's your ego at play. And your ego loves comparison. It's addicted to it. Here's why: comparison is the ultimate game for your ego. It's a game with infinite possibilities. You can always find someone richer than you. Always. Someone prettier. Someone more successful. Someone with a better job, a better body, a better life. There's always someone winning. And if there's always someone winning, that means you're always potentially losing, and your ego thrives in that anxiety. Your ego feeds off that insecurity. But here's the dark twist. Comparison also works the other way. You can always find someone to feel superior to, someone less accomplished, someone less attractive, someone struggling, someone failing, so you can feel better than them. Your ego gets a hit from that too. Pride. Superiority, temporary elevation. Both directions work. Both directions feed the beast. This game has no ending. It has no winner. It just generates constant suffering. Constant, unrelenting suffering. Comparison is ego's favorite story, and you're losing every chapter. Think about that. Every single chapter of the comparison story you're losing. Because the game is rigged. Because it's infinite. Because there's always someone further ahead, always someone to measure yourself against. And as long as you're playing, you're losing. Let me paint a picture. It's 11 p.m., you're in bed. You pick up your phone. You start scrolling. You're watching other people's lives, their vacations, their promotions, their relationships, their bodies, their wins. And you're measuring your behind the scenes against their curated highlight reel. You're comparing your day-to-day reality, the struggle, the failure, the mundanity, to their polished, filtered, selected moments. And you feel small. You feel insufficient. You feel like you're not doing enough. Not being enough. Not having enough. But here's what you're actually doing. You're torturing yourself with an illusion. What you're comparing yourself to is not real. It's a construction. It's a carefully curated narrative. The person you're comparing yourself to, they've selected the best moments. They've filtered them. They've edited them. They've presented them in the most favorable light. That's not their life, that's their marketing. You see the finish line, but you don't see the 10-year grind. You see someone who's successful now, but you don't see the 1,000 failures, the nights they couldn't sleep, the relationships they sacrificed, the rejections that almost broke them. You see the promotion, you don't see the 50 no's that came before it. You see the fit body, you don't see the 6 a.m. workouts, the discipline, the months of sacrifice, the days they didn't want to go but went anyway. Everyone's life is harder than it looks from the outside. Everyone. The person you envy? They're struggling with things you don't know about. They have doubts you can't see. They have failures that didn't make the highlight reel, but you don't know that. So you just see the win, and you see your loss, and you compare. You're judging their chapter 25 with your chapter 5 wisdom. That's what you're doing. That's the comparison trap. You're at the beginning of your story. They're at the end of theirs. And you're wondering why you're not where they are. You're wondering why you haven't accomplished what they've accomplished, why you haven't built what they've built. Because you're in different chapters, different timelines, different contexts, and comparing them destroys you. It destroys your clarity. It destroys your motivation. It destroys your ability to see your own path. Now here's what you need to understand. Your ego's job is to survive. Your job is to thrive. They're different missions. Your ego wants to keep you safe. It wants you to fit in. It wants you to be accepted. It wants you to not stand out or fail or fall. Survival is about protection. Survival is about fitting in. Survival is about not losing but thriving. Thriving is about moving forward. Thriving is about growth. Thriving is about pushing past your limits. Thriving is about becoming more. Those are opposite directives. And you can't serve both masters at the same time. When you're in comparison mode, your ego is running the show. You're in survival mode. You're trying to measure up. You're trying to fit in. You're trying to not be seen as less than. You're protecting yourself. You're safe, but you're stuck. The moment you stop comparing, everything changes. Suddenly you can see your own path, not someone else's path, your path. You can finally move at your own pace, not their pace, your pace. And you can finally measure success by your own standards, not by their standards, your standards. Let me tell you about someone I know who made this shift. This person was obsessed with their competitors. Every morning they'd check what the competition was doing. Every achievement the competitor had, they'd compare it to their own. If the competitor got a promotion, they felt behind. If the competitor published something, they felt inadequate. They were living their competitor's timeline instead of their own. They were measuring their success by external benchmarks instead of internal progress. And they were miserable, stuck, spinning. Then one day they stopped. They deleted the apps that showed them competitor updates. They stopped scrolling through comparison feeds. They stopped measuring against external standards, and they started doing something different. They started checking their own growth. Every day they asked one question: am I better than I was yesterday? That's it. That's the only comparison that matters. Are you better than you were yesterday? Did you grow? Did you learn? Did you push yourself? Did you move forward? That's success. That's the only measurement that matters, not what someone else is doing. Not how far behind you are, not how far ahead they are. Just, are you moving? Your only competition is who you were this morning. That's it. That's the only race that matters. You versus yesterday's version of you. Can you beat that? Can you be smarter, stronger, faster, more disciplined, more focused, more honest? That's the competition. That's the game worth playing. Because when you're competing against yesterday, you always have a chance to win. You're always in control. You're always capable of winning. It's not dependent on what someone else is doing. It's only dependent on you. And that's freedom. The moment you get out of the comparison trap, the moment you step out of your ego's favorite game, something shifts. You stop feeling small. You stop feeling like you're losing. You stop looking at other people's timelines. You start looking at your own progress. And you realize I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm exactly on my own timeline, and that's enough. That's more than enough. That's freedom. But here's the thing, getting out of comparison requires vulnerability. It requires admitting that you don't need to be the best. It requires accepting that you can be enough without being the most. And that's terrifying to your ego. Your ego wants to win. Your ego wants to be superior. Your ego wants to know it's better than someone else. But what if you didn't need that? What if you could just be? What if you could just move forward at your own pace on your own timeline, toward your own vision? What would that feel like? That's what we need to explore next. Chapter 6. Vulnerability is not weakness, you're alone. Right now, even if you're surrounded by people, even if you have a partner, friends, family, you're alone. And you built this prison yourself. You've constructed walls so high, so thick, so impenetrable that nobody can hurt you. And that's the problem. Nobody can reach you either. You think you're protecting yourself. You're actually isolating yourself. You're sitting in a fortress convinced you're safe when really you're just trapped. Your armor is your prison. Let me be clear about what I'm saying. The walls you built, the ones that keep people out, the ones that protect you from criticism, from judgment, from failure. Those walls are working. They're very effective. Nobody's getting through to hurt you. Congratulations, you're invulnerable. You're also completely alone. Because here's the fundamental truth. The person who can't be vulnerable can't be loved. It's not possible. Love requires opening. Love requires risk. Love requires saying, here I am, flawed and frightened and human, and I'm trusting you with that. If you can't do that, love can't happen. You can have proximity to people. You can have relationships that look good from the outside. But you can't have real connection. You can't have genuine intimacy, because intimacy is the opposite of armor. The person who can't admit struggle can't be supported. Think about that. You're struggling. You're suffering. You need help, but you can't ask for it. You can't admit it. So you suffer alone, and people who love you watch you suffer helpless because you won't let them in. You won't let them help. You won't admit you need them. So they feel rejected, and you feel unsupported. And the whole thing is a tragedy that didn't need to happen. You're alone in a room full of people. That's what this is. That's the cost of your armor. Strength that never bends will eventually break. Write that down. Remember it. The strongest oak tree in the storm is the one that bends. The one that's rigid, the one that refuses to sway, the one that won't give an inch. That tree breaks, it snaps. It doesn't survive the storm. But the tree that bends, that yields, that moves with the pressure, that tree survives. That tree thrives. You're trying to be the rigid tree. You're trying to be unbreakable. And you're about to snap. Your relationships are about to snap. Your health is about to snap. Your peace of mind is about to snap. Because you won't bend. You won't admit weakness. You won't be vulnerable. Now here's where most people get stuck. They think vulnerability is weakness. They think admitting you don't know something makes you look incompetent. They think asking for help makes you look needy. They think showing struggle makes you look broken. So they hide. They pretend. They perform competence in areas where they're lost. And they stop learning. Your ego insists on competence in all areas. You have to know. You have to have the answers. You have to be capable. So you pretend. Someone asks you a question you don't understand, and instead of saying, I don't know, you nod. You fake understanding. You go home and panic because you have no idea what they meant. Or you guess and you guess wrong, and now you look incompetent anyway. But at least nobody saw you not knowing in the moment. At least you protected your image. For a few hours. Until reality caught up. You fake confidence when you're lost. You're in a meeting, and someone says something complex and you don't get it. But you nod. You take notes. You look thoughtful. You pretend you understand. And the whole time your brain is spinning, trying to figure out what they meant. You could have asked. You could have said, "Can you explain that again?" But you didn't, because that would be admitting you don't know. And you stop learning. The moment you decide you have to have all the answers, learning stops, growth stops, everything stops. But the moment you admit, "I don't know," everything changes. Doors open, people help, growth accelerates. Let me tell you about an executive I know. Brilliant person, highly successful. But they had one problem. They didn't know how to run a meeting. They'd sit in meetings and they'd feel lost. They didn't understand how to structure conversations, how to keep people focused, how to make decisions. But they didn't admit it. They just pretended. They showed up and faked competence, and their meetings were ineffective. People hated them. Time was wasted, and nothing got decided. Then one day something shifted. Maybe they got tired. Maybe they got humble. But they admitted it. They said to someone they trusted, "I don't know how to run a meeting. I need help." And that person taught them. That person showed them the structure. That person gave them feedback. And this executive became their company's best meeting facilitator. They went from faking competence to actually being competent. And the transformation? The transformation started with 3 words. I don't know. I don't know is the beginning of everything. Learning, growth, connection, transformation. It all starts there. Not with pretending to know, with admitting you don't. That's where real strength begins. Now here's the part that really messes with people's heads. Asking for help is not weakness. Asking for help is a sign of strength. Real strength. Not the fake strength of carrying everything alone. The real strength of knowing what you need and asking for it. Only weak people can afford pride. Think about that. Only weak people can afford the luxury of doing everything themselves. Only weak people can afford to reject help. Because they have nothing to lose. They're already at the bottom. But strong people? Strong people know something different. They ask for what they need. They delegate. They collaborate. They admit when they're struggling. They say, "I need help with this," and they mean it. This isn't soft. This isn't emotional. This is strategic. You don't have to carry everything alone. You physically cannot carry everything alone. You're human. You have limits. You have finite energy. You have areas of weakness. And the strongest people I know are the most willing to ask. They're not embarrassed by it. They're not threatened by it. They just ask. Because they understand something fundamental. Asking for help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. When you ask for help, you give other people an opportunity to matter. You give them a chance to contribute. You give them a reason to invest in you. People want to help. They want to matter. They want to be needed. When you reject help, you're rejecting them. You're saying, "I don't need you." And they feel that. They feel rejected, but when you ask for help, something shifts. You become connected. You become relational. You become human. And people want to help humans. They don't want to help armor. They don't want to help walls. They want to help people. Real people. Vulnerable people. People willing to admit they don't have all the answers. The strongest people I know are the most willing to ask. They ask for advice. They ask for feedback. They ask for support. They ask for help. And because they ask, they have access to everyone else's wisdom. They have access to collaboration. They have access to solutions they never would have found alone. And they grow faster. They move faster. They succeed more. Your armor is your prison. And the key to that prison is vulnerability. The moment you admit you don't know, you start learning. The moment you ask for help, you start connecting. The moment you admit struggle, you start getting supported. And the moment you stop performing and start being, you start actually living. That's freedom. That's real strength. But here's what I need you to understand. Being vulnerable in a world that rewards performance is terrifying. It's terrifying because you might get hurt. You might get rejected. You might get judged. And your ego will fight that with everything it has. Your ego will say, "This is dangerous. Protect yourself. build higher walls, but what happens when you refuse? What happens when you stay open anyway? What happens when you choose connection over protection? That's what we're going to explore next. Chapter 7. The ego loves drama more than peace. You're addicted to conflict. You don't think you are. You probably think you hate conflict. You probably tell yourself you're just trying to resolve things, trying to set boundaries, trying to be honest. But deep down, you're addicted to it. Here's why. Conflict feeds your ego. It's like fuel. Arguments, disputes, misunderstandings, these give your ego a stage. During a conflict, your ego is alive. It's activated. It's fighting for survival. Your adrenaline is pumping. Your heart is racing. Your mind is sharp and focused. You are present. You matter. Someone's listening. Someone cares enough to fight back. You feel alive. Peace, by contrast, is boring to the ego. In peace, there's nothing to prove. No one's watching. There's no activation. There's no drama. There's no stage. Just quiet. Just normalcy. Just you. And to your ego, that's death. That's irrelevance. That's invisibility. So what do you think happens? What do you think your ego does when things are calm? Your ego manufactures drama. It unconsciously, or sometimes consciously, creates conflict just to feel alive again. Just to feel activated. Just to matter. I know someone like this. Let me paint the picture. This person is in a relationship. Things are actually going well. No major issues. No unresolved fights. It's quiet. It's peaceful. But this person can't stand it. So they bring up something from 2 years ago. Something that was resolved. Something that doesn't matter anymore. But they bring it up anyway. They relitigate the argument. They rehash the pain. They say, "Remember when you said that thing?" And they're off. They're activated. The conflict is back. The drama is back. They're alive again, and their partner is confused. Where is this coming from? We were fine, but that's the thing. They were too fine. Peace doesn't feed the ego, so the ego will starve itself for drama. This person is addicted to the activation that conflict provides. They're not trying to resolve anything. They're not trying to grow. They're hungry. They're feeding the beast. And they don't even know it. This pattern repeats. Things calm down. Ego gets bored. They manufacture a new conflict. Things heat up. They feel alive. Things resolve. They feel small again. So they create drama again. It's a cycle. And it never breaks until someone recognizes it and decides to stop. Now here's what you need to understand about chronic conflict. Your body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. Your physiology doesn't care if the conflict is important or not. If you're in conflict, you're in stress mode. Your cortisol is elevated. Your nervous system is activated. Your body is in survival mode. If you're in constant conflict, you're in constant stress. Constant, that's not hyperbole. That's physiology. Your health degrades. Your immune system weakens. Your heart suffers. Your sleep suffers. Your digestion suffers, all of it. Your body is in constant emergency mode, and that takes a toll, a devastating toll. Your relationships deteriorate. Every conflict, even if it gets resolved, leaves a mark. It leaves scar tissue. You build up resentment. You build up defensiveness. You stop trusting. You stop opening. Each argument makes the next one easier. Each conflict makes the next connection harder. By the time you realize what's happened, the relationship is hollow. It looks intact from the outside, but it's empty inside. Your mental clarity disappears. You can't think straight. You can't focus. You can't create. You can't problem solve. Your brain is in reactive mode instead of generative mode. All your energy is going toward fighting, defending, proving. Nothing is left for growth. Nothing is left for building. Everything becomes about winning the next argument, and the ego thinks it's winning. During the conflict, it feels like victory. It feels like you're protecting yourself. It feels like you're standing your ground. The ego is convinced that this is strength. This is necessary. This is survival, but your entire life is losing. You're killing yourself to win arguments that don't matter. That's what's happening. You're destroying your health, your relationships, your peace of mind, your future, all to prove a point in an argument that nobody will remember in a year. You're killing yourself to win arguments that don't matter. Now here's the final test. This is where ego detox gets real. This is where you separate from those who just understand this intellectually from those who actually change. You're going to have moments, many moments, where you are absolutely, completely 100% right, and the other person is absolutely, completely 100% wrong. You're going to have evidence. You're going to have facts. You're going to have logic on your side. And you're going to have an opportunity to prove it, to win, to be vindicated. And in that moment, you're going to have a choice. You're going to have to choose, do you prove it, or do you protect the relationship? You cannot do both. This is the final test of ego detox. Can you let it go? Can you be right and say nothing? Can you know the truth and not need to make them acknowledge it? That's strength. That's wisdom. That's ego detox. Let me tell you about someone who passed this test. This person had a friend, a close friend, and the friend did something hurtful, made an assumption that wasn't true, said something unkind, and the person had every right to be angry. They had every right to correct the record. They had every right to make the friend understand how wrong they were. They had all the ammunition, but instead they let it go. They acknowledged the hurt. They didn't pretend it didn't happen. But they chose not to relitigate it. They chose not to prove the friend wrong. They chose not to win the argument. They chose the friendship. That person has graduated. They understand something most people don't. The friendship is more valuable than the victory. They understand that ego detox is not about being right. It's about being at peace. Peace is available right now. Right now. Not someday. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when everyone agrees with you. Right now. It's available. You just have to stop fighting for your point. You have to stop needing to prove. You have to stop creating drama to feel alive. What would happen if you just let the next conflict go? What if someone said something hurtful and you just didn't engage? What if you didn't defend yourself? What if you didn't correct them? What if you didn't prove they were wrong? What if you just let it be? Peace would be available. Right now. You just have to stop fighting for your point. Here's what most people don't understand. When you stop fighting, you don't lose. You win. Because the victory was never about being right. The victory is about having peace. And peace is only available when you stop fighting. But staying peaceful in a dramatic world is hard. It requires that you look inside yourself and address the thing that's really driving the conflict. Not what they did. Not what they said. But what inside you needs conflict to feel alive. What inside you is so empty that it needs drama to feel full. That's the deepest work. That's where we go next. Chapter 8. Your shame is your greatest teacher. Everything you're defending is built on shame. Everything. Your arrogance. Shame your anger. Shame your rigidity. Shame your constant criticism. Shame your need to prove yourself. Shame. Your drama. Shame. Your inability to be vulnerable. Shame. Every single defensive behavior, every reactive pattern, every way you're trying to protect yourself, it's all built on shame. And your ego knows this. Your ego knows there's something underneath, something you're terrified of, something you've been running from your entire life. So your ego does what it does best. It builds a wall. It creates a fortress. It manufactures a persona to hide the thing you're ashamed of. Shame whispers. Ego shouts. That's how it works. Shame is quiet. Shame is internal. It whispers, you're not enough. You're broken. You failed. You're unworthy. You can barely hear it. It's a quiet voice in the background. But it's constant. It's always there, and it's destroying you quietly. So your ego steps in and shouts. It shouts loudly enough to drown out the shame. It performs, it proves. It attacks, it defends. It does whatever it takes to make sure you never have to face that quiet shame. Here's the problem. When your ego shouts, everyone hears it. They see the arrogance. They see the defensiveness. They see the aggression. They don't see the shame underneath. They just see someone who's annoying, someone who's infuriating, someone who's difficult. They don't see the wounded person underneath the armor, but you know it's there. You feel it, and so does everyone close to you, because no amount of ego shouting can completely muffle shame's whisper. Let me show you how this mechanism works. You grow up in poverty, financial instability, your family doesn't have money, and shame attaches to that. You internalize the message. Poor people are less than. We are less than. I am less than. That's the shame. That's the whisper. Now your ego can't allow that whisper to continue, so it shouts. It gets obsessed with status, with money, with appearing successful. You become driven. You work harder than everyone else. You need the nice car. You need the expensive house. You need people to know how much you've made. You need to prove you're not what you came from. Your ego is shouting so loudly about status that the shame whisper stays hidden. But here's the thing. You never feel satisfied. You get the money and it's not enough. You get the status and it feels hollow. Because you're not actually building toward something. You're running from something. You're running from the shame, and you can outrun it for a while. But it's always there. It always catches up, or here's another one. You grow up feeling stupid. Maybe you struggled in school. Maybe a teacher told you you weren't smart. Maybe your family was academic and you didn't measure up. Shame whispers, you're not intelligent. You're dumb. People will find out, so your ego shouts. It gets defensive about your intelligence. You have strong opinions. You argue constantly. You need to be right. You can't say I don't know because that might confirm the shame. You criticize smart people. You diminish their intelligence so yours doesn't feel so lacking. Your ego is working overtime to make sure nobody, including you, believes the shame. But again, nobody around you sees the shame. They just see someone who's defensive and argumentative. They don't understand why you can't just admit when you're wrong. They don't understand why you fight so hard. They think you're arrogant. They think you're insecure. They don't see the terrified person underneath trying to prove they're not the thing they're most ashamed of. This is universal. This is happening inside everyone you know. Everyone is hiding something. Everyone is defending against shame. The only difference is what they're ashamed of, and how loud their ego has to shout to cover it. Now here's what most people miss. Every annoying, infuriating, defensive behavior is covering something. Your anger, it covers fear. Your arrogance, it covers inadequacy. Your aggression, it covers vulnerability. Your criticism of others, it covers self-rejection. Every behavior is a symptom. Every reaction is a clue. If you want to dismantle your ego, you can't just work on the surface behaviors. You have to look deeper. You have to look at the shame it's protecting. Let me tell you about someone I know who figured this out. This person was constantly critical of everyone, of their partner, their friends, their family, strangers. They had an opinion on everything, and it was usually negative. They pointed out flaws. They judged. They criticized. People didn't want to be around them because it was exhausting. Being criticized constantly is exhausting. Then one day something shifted. They finally looked deeper, and they realized they were critical of themselves. Devastatingly critical. They rejected themselves constantly. Every failure was proof of unworthiness. Every mistake was evidence of fundamental brokenness. They were absolutely brutal to themselves, and they were projecting that onto everyone else. The moment they realized this, everything changed. They started addressing the self-rejection. They started practicing self-compassion. They started accepting their failures as part of being human, not proof of being fundamentally broken. And guess what happened? The constant judgment of others evaporated. It didn't disappear because they decided to be nicer. It disappeared because there was no longer fuel for it. The shame was being addressed. The ego had nothing left to defend against. Your ego's favorite target is you. It just doesn't admit it. Your ego's favorite victim is you. And all the ways you're attacking others, criticizing others, judging others, those are just deflections. You're trying to attack them before they attack you. You're trying to point out their flaws so they don't see yours. You're so busy defending against your own shame that you're wounding everyone around you. Now here's where the real healing happens, and this is the part that changes everything. The antidote to shame isn't pride. It's not building higher walls. It's not proving yourself harder. It's not perfecting yourself so nobody can criticize you. The antidote to shame is acceptance. Radical, uncomfortable acceptance. It's saying, yes, I failed. Yes, I'm flawed. Yes, I struggled. And I'm still worthy. Not I'm worthy, because I overcame my failures. Not I'm worthy, because I'm actually successful. Not I'm worthy, because I'm smarter than I thought. But I'm worthy exactly as I am. Failures and all, flaws and all, humanity and all. When you accept your humanity instead of defending against it, shame loses its power. Shame feeds on secrecy. Shame grows in hiding. But the moment you say it out loud, the moment you acknowledge it, the moment you stop running from it, shame loses its grip. Your ego has nothing left to protect. If you've already admitted your failure, your ego can't threaten you with exposure. If you've already accepted your inadequacy, your ego can't use it against you. The shame becomes information. It becomes a teacher. It shows you where you need to grow. It shows you where you need compassion. It shows you where you've been running. The moment you stop running from your past, it stops chasing you. That's the truth. That's the freedom. The moment you turn around and face it. The moment you say, I see you. I acknowledge you. I accept you. The thing you've been running from loses its power over you. Now the question is, are you willing to do that work? Are you willing to look at what you're ashamed of? Are you willing to stop running? Because that's the only way out. That's the only way to real ego detox. Because shame is your greatest teacher. It's been trying to show you something your entire life, but you've been too busy listening to your ego's shouts to hear its whisper. Next, we have to talk about what a life actually looks like when you stop building for performance and start building for substance. Because living for visibility is killing you, and there's a better way. Chapter 9. Building a life worth living. Not just a life worth showing. You have a choice. Not later. Right now. You have a choice between two lives. One of them looks amazing.
The other one is actually amazing.
And you cannot have both. The first life is curated. It's polished. It's optimized for the external gaze. Every moment is selected for maximum impact. Every achievement is announced. Every success is documented. Every piece of your life is arranged, filtered, and presented for consumption. That life looks incredible. From the outside, the second life is built. It's real. It's messy. It's full of failures nobody sees. It's full of work nobody acknowledges. It's full of growth nobody notices. That life looks boring from the outside, but it feels complete on the inside. You can have one. You have to choose. Here's the fundamental truth. You can have a beautiful Instagram or you can have a beautiful life, but usually not both. One requires constant curation. The other requires constant authenticity. One requires an audience. The other requires presence. One requires you to be thinking about how it looks. The other requires you to be thinking about how it is. Your ego wants spectacle. Your ego needs witnesses. Your ego needs the performance. Your spirit, by contrast, wants substance. Your spirit wants depth. Your spirit wants real growth, real connection, real contribution. These are opposite directions. Your ego and your spirit are not on the same team. You're living the wrong life if you're optimizing for who's watching instead of who you're becoming. That's the question you need to answer. Are you building a life for an audience or are you building a life for yourself? Because those two things produce completely different outcomes. Now here's what trips most people up. They think real success looks impressive. They think achievement is flashy. They think building something meaningful is supposed to be visible and celebrated and obvious. But that's not how it works in reality. Real success looks boring from the outside. Actual achievement happens in the mundane. It happens in the places nobody's watching. It happens in the 5 a.m. writing session when nobody knows you're there. It happens in the unglamorous negotiation where you're working out details that aren't sexy or dramatic. It happens in the hard conversation with your partner that nobody else knows about. It happens in the months of slow, steady work that generates no social media content. The person building something real isn't performing. They're working. They're not thinking about how it looks. They're thinking about whether it works. They're not curating the narrative. They're focusing on the execution. And by the time the world notices, if the world notices, the work is already complete. The foundation is already laid. The substance is already there. All that's left is the acknowledgement. Let me give you some examples because this is important. There's a business owner. Instead of launching with fanfare and announcements and a long build-up, they just build. They work in silence. They make mistakes nobody knows about. They iterate. They refine. They work for 2 years before they tell anyone what they're doing. And when they finally launch, it's fully formed. It's profitable. It's real. Because they spent 2 years building instead of 2 weeks hyping. Meanwhile, someone else launches a similar idea with all the bells and whistles. Big announcement, social media campaign. I'm building this revolutionary thing. And then what? The thing isn't actually built yet. It's just an idea with marketing. And reality always catches up to marketing. It always does. There's an artist. They don't talk about their process. They don't share sketches or work-in-progress photos. They don't build anticipation or tell everyone what they're working on. They just work. They create in silence. And one day they release the finished work. And it's so good that people can't help but notice. They didn't need to manufacture interest. The work generates its own gravity. Boring execution beats sexy intention every single time. That's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Because sexy is fun. Sexy gets attention. Sexy gets engagement. But boring is what actually builds something that lasts. Your ego wants you to be visible. Your ego wants you to share the intention. Your ego wants you to announce the vision and get validation that, yes, that's a good idea. You should do that. But your spirit knows something different. Your spirit knows that execution is boring. Your spirit knows that the real work happens in silence. Your spirit knows that by the time you're ready to show it, it should already be fully formed. Now here's the test. Here's the audit question that separates the authentic from the performed. And I need you to answer this honestly. If no one ever knew, would you still do this? Your career. If nobody was ever going to notice, if it would never be validated, if your accomplishments would remain invisible forever, would you still pursue that career? If the answer is no, then your ego is running the show. You're building a resume for external approval, not a career for internal fulfillment. You're performing. You're not building your relationships. If the people you loved could never be shown off, if the relationship was completely private and hidden, would you still pursue it? If the answer is no, then you're with them for the image, not the intimacy. You're performing your projects. If your project was never going to be seen, never going to get credit, never going to be acknowledged, would you still create it? If the answer is no, then you're not creating for the work itself. You're creating for validation. Your goals. If your goals were achieved but nobody ever knew, would that be enough? If the answer is no, then you're not pursuing the goal. You're pursuing the story about the goal. You're pursuing the narrative of success, not success itself. An audience is temporary. Your audience will change. They'll lose interest. They'll move on. They'll leave. But yourself? Yourself is forever. You're going to live with yourself for the rest of your life. That's the only audience that matters. That's the only relationship you need to optimize for. Every major life decision deserves this audit question. Your career, your relationships, your projects, your goals. Would you still pursue them if they were completely invisible? That's your answer to whether you're living authentically. That's your answer to whether you're building or performing. If you can answer yes to any of these, you're aligned. You're building a life worth living, not just a life worth showing. You're pursuing something because it matters to you, not because it looks good. That's the difference between a life and a performance. Now the hard part is this. If you're honest with yourself, you're probably going to realize that a lot of your life is built on performance. Your job might be chosen for the title, not the fulfillment. Your relationship might be chosen for the image, not the intimacy. Your goals might be chosen for the bragging rights, not the meaning. And that's not a judgment. That's just data. That's information. The good news is that you can change it. Right now. You can start asking different questions. You can start building for substance instead of spectacle. You can start moving toward what actually matters to you instead of what looks good to everyone else. The life worth living is never the life worth posting. Remember that. The moment you optimize for posting, you lose the life. The moment you optimize for living, the posts don't matter anymore. And that's when everything changes. Next, we need to talk about how to actually do this. Because understanding that you should build for substance instead of spectacle is one thing. Actually executing it is different. Actually putting in the boring work. Actually staying invisible while you build. Actually trusting the process when nobody's watching. That's the final piece. That's the DETOX protocol. Chapter 10. The DETOX protocol. Your daily practice. Understanding ego detox and actually doing ego detox are two completely different things. You can finish this audiobook today feeling inspired, feeling clear, feeling like everything makes sense. And then tomorrow you wake up and you fall back into the same patterns. You defend yourself. You seek approval. You perform. You compare. You create drama. You're right back where you started. That happens to most people. And it's not because they're weak. It's because awareness without practice is just information. It's not transformation. Transformation requires practice. Transformation requires daily work. Transformation requires building new muscles. That's what this chapter is. This is your protocol. These are the 3 practices that will actually change your life. Not theoretically. Actually practice 1. The daily ego audit. Every morning and every evening spend 2 minutes asking yourself questions. That's it. 2 minutes. Morning and evening. Bookmark this if you need to. In the morning before you start your day, ask yourself, where is my ego likely to hijack me today? Look at your day. Who are you going to interact with? What situations are coming up? Where are you likely to defend? Where are you likely to seek approval? Where are you likely to perform? Just notice. Write it down if you can. Awareness is the first antidote to ego. Then, in the evening, ask yourself different questions. Where did my ego hijack me today? When did I defend instead of listen? When did I seek approval instead of serve? When did I perform instead of be present? Be specific. Don't just think about it. Write it down. See the patterns. Because you can't change what you don't see, you're building a muscle of awareness. Every time you notice your ego in action, you're training that muscle. You're strengthening your ability to catch yourself. You're developing the capacity to interrupt the pattern before it controls you. This isn't punishment. This isn't shame. This is feedback. This is data. You're a scientist studying your own behavior. At first you might not see much. You might feel like nothing's changing. But keep going. Keep doing the audit. After a few weeks, you'll start noticing patterns. You'll see the situations that trigger your defensiveness. You'll see the people who activate your need for approval. You'll see the environments where you perform. And once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. You can't change what you don't see. But once you see it, change becomes possible. Not guaranteed, possible. And possibility is all you need to start. 2 minutes. Morning and evening. That's the first practice. Practice 2, the vulnerability practice. Once a week, do one small thing that scares your ego. Just one, that's all. One thing per week. It doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be life-changing. It just has to make your ego uncomfortable. Here's what that looks like. Admit you were wrong. Find one situation where you were wrong and say it. Don't explain. Don't justify. Just say I was wrong. That's it. Notice how that feels. Notice how people respond. Notice that you don't die. Notice that people don't reject you. Notice that being wrong doesn't destroy you. Ask for help. One time per week, ask for something you normally wouldn't ask for. Ask a colleague for advice. Ask a friend for support. Ask someone to teach you something. Notice how that feels. Notice that people actually like helping. Notice that asking for help doesn't make you weak. Share something you're struggling with. Tell someone you trust about something that's hard for you right now. Not to get sympathy, just to be honest, just to be seen. Notice how that feels. Notice that being vulnerable doesn't make you broken. Wear something you'd normally be self-conscious about. Wear the outfit that makes you nervous. Dye your hair. Do something small that makes your ego say people will judge you, and then do it anyway. Notice that people don't actually judge you. Notice that you can be yourself and people still like you. The ego thrives on safety. Safety means no risk. Safety means no exposure. Safety means performing perfectly so nobody sees your humanity. But growth thrives on risk. Growth thrives on being seen. Growth thrives on doing things that scare you. Ego detox requires repeated exposure to the things that scare your pride. It's like exposure therapy. You're training your nervous system to recognize that vulnerability is not dangerous. You're training yourself to be comfortable with discomfort. You're building tolerance for things your ego says will destroy you. Let me tell you what I've seen happen. Someone starts saying I don't know in meetings. That's their weekly vulnerability practice. The first time they do it, their heart is pounding. They feel exposed. They're convinced everyone thinks they're incompetent. But then something happens. The person asking the question explains it. The meeting moves on. And the person who said I don't know gets respect. More respect, actually, because people see them as honest instead of pretending. They see someone willing to admit gaps instead of faking competence. So they keep doing it. Week after week. They say I don't know and they realize it's safe. It's actually safe. And people respect them more, not less. By the month, their whole relationship to meetings has changed. By the quarter, their whole professional reputation has shifted. They've become someone people trust because they're authentic instead of someone people doubt, because they seem defensive. That's what happens. That's what the vulnerability practice does. It rewires you. It shows you that the thing you're most afraid of, being seen, being wrong, being human, is actually the thing that creates connection. Once a week. One small vulnerability, that's the second practice. Practice 3. The redirected energy, all the energy you've been spending on defending, proving, and performing, redirect it. That's the final practice. It's the most important one. Your ego has been running your entire life, and your ego is intense. Your ego is focused. Your ego has energy. But your ego's been using that energy for the wrong things. It's been using it to protect your image. It's been using it to seek approval. It's been using it to prove yourself. It's been using it to win arguments and maintain superiority and stay safe. Now that you're aware of that energy, now that you're practicing vulnerability, you have an opportunity. You can redirect that energy. You can put it towards something that actually builds your life instead of something that just protects your ego. Build something. Create something. Help someone. Learn something. Grow something. Take all the intensity, all the focus, all the drive that your ego had, and point it toward contribution instead of protection. Point it toward creation instead of defense. Point it toward growth instead of survival. Your ego doesn't have to go away. Your ego can have a job. Instead of protecting your image, it can protect your integrity. Instead of seeking approval, it can seek growth. Instead of proving your worth, it can build your legacy. The same intense energy becomes fuel for something that matters. Ego detox isn't subtraction. It's redirection. You're not trying to have no ego. You're trying to have an ego that serves you instead of an ego that controls you. You're trying to have ambition that's rooted in values instead of validation. You're trying to have drive that creates instead of defends. Here's what this looks like in practice. You have a Sunday afternoon. You used to spend that time scrolling social media, looking at other people's accomplishments, measuring yourself against them. That's ego energy being wasted on comparison. Now you spend that Sunday afternoon working on something meaningful to you. Writing, learning, creating, building, helping. That's ego energy being redirected toward growth. You're in a conversation with someone. You used to interrupt them to prove your point. That's ego energy being wasted on winning. Now you listen. You ask questions. You serve them with your attention and insight. That's ego energy being redirected toward connection. You make a mistake. You used to spend hours defending it, explaining it, blaming external circumstances. That's ego energy being wasted on protection. Now you acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward. That's ego energy being redirected toward growth. Ego detox isn't subtraction. It's redirection. It's taking the same fuel and burning it for something that actually builds your life. Your daily protocols are here's what you do. Starting tomorrow. Not Monday. Not next month, tomorrow. Morning 2-minute ego audit. Where's your ego likely to hijack you? Throughout the day, redirect your ego energy. Build instead of defend. Create instead of perform. Serve instead of prove. Evening, 2-minute ego audit. Where did your ego hijack you? Once a week, one vulnerability practice. Do something that scares your ego. That's it. That's the protocol. That's the detox. And here's what's going to happen. The first week, you'll notice you're defending less. The first month, you'll notice you're seeking approval less. The first quarter, you'll notice you're performing less. By the end of the year, you won't recognize yourself. You'll be someone who's actually present, someone who's actually authentic, someone who's actually living instead of performing. And the people around you will notice too. They'll see someone who's real. Someone who's honest. Someone who's not trying so hard to be seen because they're too busy being. And they'll be attracted to that. They'll want to be around that. They'll want to help that person. They'll want to invest in that person. Because authenticity is magnetic. Performance is exhausting. Authenticity is magnetic. You've finished this audiobook. You understand ego. You understand what it costs you. You understand what it's hiding. You understand how to break free from it. Now comes the hard part. Now comes the actual work. Now comes the daily practice. You can't change what you don't see. You can't grow without vulnerability. You can't build while defending. This is your protocol. This is your permission. This is your invitation to finally step out of the performance and step into your actual life. The choice is yours. The time is now. The work begins tomorrow. Go. So here's what we've covered in the last hour. Your ego isn't your enemy. It's your enemy's employee. It's been running your life from the shadows, convincing you that proving yourself is the same as improving yourself, that defending is the same as building, that being right is the same as being happy. It's convinced you that one criticism means you're failing, that one compliment means you're succeeding, that if nobody knows about your struggle, it doesn't count. It's cost you relationships. It's cost you growth. It's cost you peace. But here's the good news. You can take it back. Right now. Not someday. Not when conditions are perfect. Right now. You can start the daily audit. You can ask one person for help. You can admit you were wrong about one thing. You can choose peace over being right one time. You can redirect your intensity toward building something instead of defending something. Small choices, repeated daily. That's ego detox. That's how you get free. The question isn't whether you can do this. The question is, are you finally tired enough to start? Because your ego is betting you're not. Your ego is betting you'll finish this, feel inspired for 24 hours, and then slip right back into the comfortable prison of performing and defending and proving. Prove it wrong today, right now. Pick one thing from this book and do it. Not think about it. Not plan to do it. Do it. That's how this changes your life. Now go.